Okay, picture this. A wine, like super dark, almost black. You swirl it, and you get these amazing smells. Intense raisins, sticky molasses. Then you taste it, and it's just this incredibly rich, velvety wave of sweetness. It's quite something.
It really is. And that's just the start. Welcome the learner. This deep dive is all about that experience the world of Pedro Ximénez, or PX.
Yeah, we're digging into the sources you sent over. The plan is to pull out the really key stuff, the fascinating bits, so you get a solid handle on it without, drowning in detail.
Exactly. Think of it as your curated guide. We've got expert takes, historical context, how it's made, the works.
Our mission, to figure out what makes PX so unique. Its story, production, taste, its place in the wine world, and maybe uncover a few surprises along the way.
And it's interesting, isn't it, how this one white grape, Pedro Ximénez, has become almost synonymous with these incredibly rich, sweet wines from Jerez. A lot of that comes down to its knack for packing in the sugar.
Right. A white grape becoming that dark, that sweet. That's kind of the core puzzle, isn't it? So where did it actually come from? Is it Spanish?
Well, that's where it gets a bit hazy. The origins are debated. Most signs point towards Central Europe, possibly Germany, actually.
Germany?
Really? Yeah, there are even some, physical similarities in the vines. The thinking is it arrived in Spain sometime in the Middle Ages.
Huh. But what about that story, the soldier, Pedro Ximénez?
Oh, the legend, yes. The story goes that a soldier, Peter Ximénez or something similar, brought the grape back to Andalusia from a campaign somewhere up north. Hard to prove, of course.
But a good story.
Definitely. It fits the narrative that it wasn't originally Iberian. But whatever the true origin, it absolutely found its perfect home in Andalusia, especially around Jerez.
The Marco de Jerez, it's become so linked to that place.
Totally. And historically, that high sugar was a huge deal. Back when keeping wine stable was tricky, sweetness was a natural preservative. So PX would have been pretty valuable.
Makes sense. So Andalusia, the Marco de Jerez, what makes that spot so perfect? The terroir, right? Climate, soil?
Exactly. You've got this Mediterranean, almost subtropical climate. Think long, really hot, dry summers. Then mild winters, but that's when the rain comes.
Okay.
All that sun and heat are vital for ripening, obviously, but also for something called the soleo process. We'll definitely get into that.
The sun-drying thing.
That's the one. But back to climate, you also have these winds. The Levante.
The hot, dry one.
Yeah, from the east, it can really bake things, helps with the drying. And then the Poniente, cooler, damper from the Atlantic, helps moderate things a bit, keeps humidity down generally, which is good against rot.
Got it. Hot, dry, windy, and the soil albariza. That sounds pretty special, too.
Oh, it is. It's this really pale, chalky soil, very white, high in calcium carbonate.
That helps how?
Two main things. One, it's porous, soaks up winter rain like a sponge, feeding the vines through the dry summer. Two, being white, it reflects sunlight back up.
Oh.
Yeah, it reflects it onto the vines, onto the grapes. When they're drying later, it sort of amplifies the sun.
A sponge in a mirror? Clever stuff, nature. Okay, so perfect spot. What about the vine itself? What's a PX vine like?
Well, the leaves are fairly big, sort of pentagonal, 5 lobes, bit fuzzy underneath. The grape bunches are large too, conical, and usually really tightly packed.
Which sounds good for yield, but maybe bad for disease.
Potentially, yeah. Though the dry climate helps mitigate that. The berries themselves are medium to large, roundish, thin-skinned, turning golden when ripe, and inside, super sweet, juicy pulp. That's the goal.
And it ripens late, right? Why is that good here?
More hang time, more time soaking up that intense Andalusian sun. It just lets the sugars build and build, gives it that extra push towards high concentration.
Okay, so the vine's geared for sweetness. How do they manage the vineyard specifically for, this kind of wine?
They definitely manage it differently than for, say, a dry table wine. Pruning is key. Often they use methods like vare pulgar in Jerez cane and spur pruning.
To do what? Limit the number of grapes?
Exactly. Fewer grapes mean the vine puts all its sugary energy into the ones that are left, higher concentration per berry. They also train the vines to maximize sun exposure, though they have to be careful not to scorch the grapes in extreme heat.
Right, a balancing act. Okay, now we have to talk about soleo. You said it's crucial.
It's absolutely fundamental. It's what makes PX, well, PX. After harvest, they lay the grapes out in the sun, traditionally on these round esparto grass mats, sometimes on raised beds.
On the open.
Yep. The idea is to let the sun evaporate the water inside the grapes. Dehydrate them, basically.
Which concentrates the sugars.
Massively. You can get the groat must, the juice, up to 300, even 400 grams of sugar per liter. Insane levels. And it also concentrates the acids, the flavors, everything. It's like raisin plus.
Whoa, that's incredibly sweet. How long does that take? A few days?
Usually longer, typically 1 to 3 weeks. It depends on the weather, how intense the sun is, how concentrated they want the grapes, and they have to turn them constantly by hand.
Wow, labor intensive.
Very, but essential. You need even drying, prevent mold. It's meticulous work. But yeah, without soleo, you just wouldn't get that signature PX character. It's transforming the grape before it even sees a press.
Okay, so we've got these super concentrated, almost raisin-like grapes. What's next? How do you even get juice out of those?
Huh. Good question. It's tricky. They're sticky, low in water. Traditional vertical presses were used, but nowadays, modern pneumatic presses, or even continuous ones, are often better suited. You need serious pressure to squeeze out that thick, sugary must.
I bet. And fermentation must be weird with all that sugar.
Very weird. It starts, but it's slow going. The yeast really struggles in that high sugar environment. Often it just gives up partway through.
It stops naturally.
Yeah, frequently. It might only reach, say, 4%, 5%, maybe 6% alcohol naturally before the sugar concentration just inhibits the yeast too much. And that arrested fermentation is exactly why you have so much leftover sugar. That's the sweetness.
Right. Naturally sweet, naturally lowish alcohol.
Okay.
But then in Jerez, they fortify it, add spirit.
That's the standard practice in Jerez, yes. After that partial fermentation, they add grape spirit to bring the alcohol up, usually to around 15 to 17%.
Why do that?
It stabilizes the wine, stops any potential re-fermentation, and critically, it prepares it for the long oxidative aging process it's going to undergo.
Ah, okay. But you mentioned Montilla-Moriles. They do it differently.
That's a key difference. In Montilla-Moriles, the PX grapes often get so ripe and the soleo might be managed slightly differently that they can naturally ferment to 15% or even higher without fortification. So their sweet PX wines often don't need that added spirit.
Fascinating. So fortified or naturally strong, the next step is aging. And this is where the solera system comes in, right?
Absolutely. For these sweet PX wines, both in Jerez and Montilla-Moriles, oxidative aging in a solera system is the classic approach. It's all about long, slow exposure to oxygen in barrels.
Explain the solera system again briefly. It's like a stacking system.
Kind of. Imagine rows of barrels stacked up. The bottom row, the solera, holds the oldest wine, ready for bottling. The rows above, creators, hold progressively younger wines. When they bottle from the solera row, they only take a portion from each barrel.
Okay.
Then they refill those barrels with slightly younger wine from the row above. And that row is refilled from the one above it, and so on. The newest wine goes into the top row.
So it's constantly blending old and new.
Exactly. It ensures incredible consistency year after year, but also builds up amazing complexity over time. That slow oxygen contact deepens the color, develops those intense dried fruit, molasses, coffee, nutty, chocolatey notes, and gives it that incredibly smooth, velvety texture.
It sounds like liquid history. So given all this, what are the main styles of PX we might actually find?
Well, the star is definitely Pedro Ximénez Doce, the classic sweet one from Jerez or Montilla-Moriles. This is the benchmark. Expect that deep, dark, almost ebony color.
On the taste.
Intense sweetness, obviously, but packed with flavor raisins, figs, dates, molasses, coffee, dark chocolate, maybe licorice, balsamic hints, really complex. And the texture is key, thick, viscous, velvety. But usually there's just enough acidity to stop it being cloying.
Sounds decadent. What about cream sherry? Isn't PX used there?
Yes, often. Cream sherry, under the Jerez rules, is typically a blend. Usually they take a dry Oloroso sherry and sweeten it up by adding some PX. Sometimes Moscatel, but often PX.
So it's sweeter than Oloroso, but maybe not as intensely sweet as pure PX.
Exactly. It adds that richness, those dried fruit and caramel notes from the PX, makes the Oloroso smoother, rounder, sweeter, but it's a blend.
Okay, and the Montilla-Moriles styles, apart from their potentially unfortified doce.
Right, so they have their Vinos Doces Naturales, which are like the Jerez PX doses, just often naturally high alcohol. But they also sometimes make Vinos Brancos Tranquilos dry, still white wines from PX grapes. Much lighter, subtle fruit, low acidity, very different.
A dry PX. Never heard of that.
It's less common for sure. And then uniquely, because their grapes get so ripe, they can make Vinos Fortificados Secos. These are dry styles like a fino or amontillado, but reaching that higher alcohol level naturally during fermentation without fortification, that's a Montilla-Moriles specialty.
Wow, okay, so one grape, Quite a range. It feels like the winemaker, the entomologist, must have their hands full juggling all these processes.
Oh, absolutely critical. They oversee the soleo, judging that perfect point of concentration. They manage the tricky fermentation, decide if and when to stop it. In Jerez, they manage the fortification precisely. They're the guardians of the solera, managing the blending, the transfers. And for cream sherry, their blending skill is paramount. They ensure the quality, the consistency, the house style. It's a huge responsibility.
Art and science, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive deeper into the glass. Sensory profile. What are we really smelling and tasting in a classic sweet PX?
Get ready for an explosion. Aromas first. Intense dried fruits are front and center. Raisins dominate, figs, dates, super concentrated. Then layers underneath, dark molasses, burnt sugar or caramel, roasted coffee beans, dark chocolate.
Sounds amazing.
And often licorice, sweet spices like cinnamon, maybe some balsamic notes like aged vinegar, but sweet. It's incredibly complex on the nose.
And on the palate, does it deliver?
Oh yeah, the sweetness hits first, very pronounced, but those flavors follow through the raisin, fig, coffee, chocolate. And crucially, there's usually a thread of acidity, sometimes surprisingly vibrant, that balances the sweetness, texture-wise. Dense, syrupy, viscous, coating your mouth, very full-bodied, rich, powerful from the sugar and alcohol.
So definitely a sipping wine, not a gulping one.
For sure. How does aging change it, especially decades in a solera?
It just gets deeper, more complex. Those dried fruits become almost like jam or preserves. The molasses, coffee, chocolate notes get richer, more intricate. Tertiary notes emerge, more spice, maybe leathery notes, cured tobacco.
Yeah.
The balsamic element becomes more integrated.
And the texture.
Even denser, smoother, more velvety, if you can imagine. The acidity melds in beautifully, providing structure. When you get to VOS 20 years old or VORS 30 years old, you're talking about incredible layers of complexity. History in a glass, truly incredible. Any tips for tasting it? Temperature? Glass?
Yeah, serve it slightly chilled, but not ice cold. Maybe 12 to 14 Celsius, that's low 50s Fahrenheit. It keeps the sweetness in check and lets the aromas shine. A standard white wine glass or a specific sherry glass, something with a bit of a bowl but maybe tapering slightly, works well to focus the aromas. No need to decant, generally.
Perfect. Simple enough. Now, the fun part, food. Pairing with something this sweet must be interesting. General rules.
Think balance and synergy. You can match the sweetness, complement the aromas, or go for contrast. Like saltiness loves sweetness. Bitterness can work well too.
So sticking with Andalusia first, what are the classic local pairings?
Blue cheese is a big one. A strong Andalusian blue, like a Cabrales-style cheese maybe, that saltiness and pungency against the PX sweetness. Magic.
Oh, I can imagine that.
Also, traditional sweets. Pestiños, those honey-drizzled fried pastries, or tortas de acetes, the honey, nutty, dried fruit notes in the wine, just sing with those.
Nice. And moving beyond Spain, international ideas.
Chocolate, especially dark chocolate desserts. That bitterness versus sweetness thing really works. Anything with lots of dried fruit obviously echoes the wine.
Like fruitcake.
Totally. Or just pouring it over vanilla ice cream. Or coffee ice cream. That hot, cold, rich, creamy contrast is fantastic. And blue cheese, again, Roquefort, Stilton, Gorgonzola. Same principle, sweet meets salty, tangy.
And you mentioned something surprising earlier, foie gras.
Yes, it sounds decadent, and it is, but the intense sweetness and acidity cut through the incredible richness of the foie gras beautifully. It's a classic luxury pairing.
Okay, I need to try that sometime. Can we get more specific, like PX dose versus cream sherry pairings?
Sure. For that intense PX dose, dark chocolate mousse, rich brownies, tart tatin with vanilla ice cream, fig and almond tart, coffee desserts, those strong, blue cheeses, foie gras. Think intense flavors. For cream sherry, which is a bit gentler, caramel desserts, bread pudding, nutty cakes, apple crumble or tart, maybe spiced desserts like gingerbread, milder blue cheeses work well too. Even pâtés or terrines can be surprisingly good.
And the rare dry PX.
Keep it simple there. Olives, almonds, maybe some very plain steamed fish or a simple green salad. It's much lighter.
Loads of great ideas. Any final tips for creating a great PX food experience?
Serve it right temperature, glass. Think about placement in the meal, usually dessert or cheese course. Balance intensities. Don't be afraid of contrast. And maybe share a little about the wine, the soleo, the aging. It adds to the appreciation. Good company helps too.
Always. Okay, let's talk about the rules and the players. The DO Jerez-Xérès-Sherry. How does it protect PX specifically?
It's the guardian, really. The Consejo Regulador, the council, sets and enforces the rules for all sherry, including PX. They guarantee authenticity from where the grapes are grown only within the designated Marco de Jerez for PX sherry. to mandating the traditional soleo process, setting vinification standards, requiring fortification in Jerez, demanding that specific oxidative aging in the solera system, setting minimum aging times much longer for VOS and VORS, and even ensuring it's bottled within the region. That seal means it's followed all those strict quality rules.
Wow, okay. So they're really preserving that tradition and quality. For someone wanting to try a bottle, who are some reliable producers to look for? Any standout names?
Oh, definitely. There are many great ones, but some classics include Gonzalez Bias. Their Nectar PX is widely available, very typical style. Lustau makes excellent sherries. Their San Emilio PX is top-notch.
Okay.
Osborne has the 1827 PX, known for its age and complexity. Valdespino's El Candado is another really high-quality example. Fernando de Castilla makes an antique PX, which is seriously old and complex, elegant stuff.
Antique sounds good.
And for something really special, look for Equipo Navazos. They bottle specific single casks, La Bota de Pedro Ximénez. Each bottling, each bota, is unique and often extraordinary, highly sought after.
That's a great starting list. So where does PX sit in the market overall? Is it a big seller?
It's more of a niche product, really. Not huge volumes compared to table wines, but it's definitely a niche of excellence, high quality, high prestige. And it seems to be gaining interest as people explore premium dessert wines more.
Right.
Its association with special occasions, that indulgence factor, helps its image. And honestly, that whole unique soleo story makes it stand out. It has a real point of difference.
So small but mighty and maybe growing. Well, this has been an incredible journey through the world of PX.
It really covers a lot, doesn't it? From those sun-baked origins in Andalusia, the magic of soleo concentrating the grapes, that patient aging in the solera, the super rich taste, and how well it can pair with food.
Absolutely. It definitely leaves you wanting to taste it again or for the first time. So for you, the learner, here's a final thought. Go find a bottle. Maybe one of those names we mentioned. Pour a small glass. Notice the color, the incredible aroma.
Take a slow sip. Feel that texture, taste that concentrated history.
And just think about how that journey, the sun, the soil, the drying, the long aging in barrels, how all of that ended up in your glass. It really is like tasting the soul of Andalusia.
And remember, this deep dive is a great start, but there's always more. Keep exploring sherry. Maybe compare a Jerez PX to one from Montilla-Moriles. See if you can taste the difference. The journey doesn't have to end here.
Definitely not. Well, thank you for joining us on this sweet adventure into Pedro Ximénez. Until next time.